Ladies, gentlemen, furries, it is another Sterling Belikov Outdoors production. Today, you guys have voted, and I am here to make a video on the CZ P07. First out of the gate, I'm going to say I already have some opinions and some feelings on this firearm, but we're going to save those towards the end. We're going to focus on the features that drew me to this firearm and the things that I feel that it does good, and the things I feel that if CZ went and reiterated, they could do much better with this firearm. So, something else I'd like to point out, I went and ended up doing some trimming around the area of where we have my little range on the property that I shoot from. Added some more backstops, and hopefully we're going to see how these do as we're making this video, and then make changes as we go along. So, getting into the firearms review. This is your CZ P07. It is about the same size of a Smith & Wesson M&P Compact in the 4.25 inch range. Like the Smith & Wesson M&P Compact, it has interchangeable back straps. These are something that I feel is really nice about the CZ and the Smith & Wesson. So, without much other talking, let's get into shooting this. First, put my ears on, and then we'll shoot it a little bit, and then I'll go over some of the features. So, let's see if my cabinet position that's over there stays up with our target on it whenever I start pumping rounds into it. So I'm going to drop the hammer and put it in half cock mode, which is something that you could do with this. And we'll talk a little bit more about some features. And I'm going to try a couple shots in double action mode. I don't think it's going to go really well, but we're going to try it. And that was the last shot. So, let's go down, check the target, and see how those did. So, I think we're probably back a little bit farther than 15 yards. And this is about as good as I expected for this particular handgun. We have 7 rounds out of 15 on the target. We have 8 off the target. So, overall, we're seeing how this firearm did. Now, this kind of leads me into some of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about with this particular firearm. One of the things that drew me to this firearm was the size. This is a fairly compact firearm for its size, with 15 round magazine and somewhere near a 4-inch barrel. This is really nice. In my opinion, this does things better than the SIG P365, the Glock 19. However, it doesn't do things as well as I think it could do. One of the biggest areas of that is the trigger. This firearm, my major complaint is the trigger system on it. The triggers on most CZs are phenomenal. They have a really crisp, smooth trigger. They typically are lighter than a lot of other guns as far as double action, single action, hammer fired guns. However, for whatever reason, based on what I've heard after the fact of getting this firearm, the CZ P07 missed the mark on that. They missed it completely. Some of you who follow me on X, by the way, if you're watching my videos, I highly recommend you follow me over on X or Twitter, whichever you want to call it, so you can get involved with my upcoming firearms polls based on the content, or which bases the content that I'm going to make. You guys, as my viewers, are the biggest person who decides what kind of content I make. Unlike some other firearms creators, I go and allow you guys to tell me, based on the polls that I put out, what you guys are most interested in seeing. So the best way to get in touch with me and tell me what you think is on X. I post political opinions and discussions on there as well, so feel free to jump in and comment. I'm super interactive with fans and followers on there, so hopefully I'll see you there and get you guys engaged in some of my polls. But back to the firearm. So it, like a lot of CZs, has very little reciprocating mass. However, it doesn't have the weight and control that some of the other CZs do. I feel like a lot of that may be because of the polymer frame with this one, but I keep going back to the trigger. One of the biggest gripes for me is the trigger. It kind of feels like a stapler, and I'm just not a huge fan of that. One of the features that I was a huge fan of whenever I got drawn to this firearm is this gun actually has a manual safety. If you put the hammer back a little bit, I can flip up and engage this polymer safety. This has a traditional thumb style safety like on a 1911 or Beretta or multiple other firearms, where you can go and engage the safety by flipping it up and down into fire mode. However, it has another cool feature that most of the CZs do not have, except for the P07 and the P09, which is you can swap out this manual safety with no other tools, no other parts, just the fingers that God gave you. You can switch those parts out and insert a decocker, meaning, unlike with the CZ P01 or SP01, you don't need to buy a separate gun. This gun can do both. So if you feel like running a decocker and a manual safety, or a decocker instead of the manual safety, you can do that. If you want to run the manual safety because you're safety conscientious, like I am, you can flip that safety on with it cocked and locked, and you have a safety that disengages the trigger. Whereas with a decocker, you're going to hit that, push it down, it will drop this hammer, and you'll get a long double action pull. That is something that I am really not a big fan of on this pistol. Now, gun is safe, gun is clear. We are outside on the range, and it is safe for me to do this. So, the trigger pull on this in double action mode is super long and heavy. It's almost like shooting a Taurus revolver. If I had to guess, I'd probably say it's about a 9-pound double action trigger pull, but that's just a guess. And then in single action mode, I would probably say it's about 5 or 6 pounds, which isn't bad. It's better probably than your standard Glock. And after you get through the take up, there's a little bit of take up and travel, but once you hit that wall, it's pretty firm. And you put a little bit of pressure behind that and it breaks. Unlike the CZ SP01, which is a smooth, crisp, as soon as you get to that wall, there's no take up, there's no anything. It's immediate hard wall and then breaks like glass. Even in double action mode, which is sometimes something that I'm not a huge fan of, the CZ SP01 does that so much better. And so jumping from the CZ SP01, which has been my concealed carry piece for years, to this was just something I couldn't do. And another huge part of that was these sights. I don't know if I can get a good camera angle on it, but for whatever reason, CZ on the P07 did not go back to Meprolite for the tritium night sights. For the P07 and the P09, they ended up going with something very similar to HK's glow sights. So these sights are daytime, nighttime sights. In the daytime, they look sort of greenish white, but then at night, they have bioluminescent paint that's mixed into the sights that makes them glow green, much like the HK VP9. To me, I'm not a huge fan of that. It makes sense on a outside the waistband can carry option, but on a concealed carry firearm, I just don't think it makes sense. And the reason for that is, if this is something that's going to live on your waistband or be a nightstand gun, it needs to be something that you don't have to hit with a flashlight. And this is not that. So that's a huge gripe I have with it, in the fact of the night sights are garbage. They're not true night sights. They needed to be tritium night sights. And the trigger is awful. Other than that, the weight on this isn't bad, but I will say I don't think it's that much less than something like a CZ P07. The ergonomics on it, though, are fairly great. They did get that right. It does feel really good in the hand, especially with these customizable back straps, which is something I said I would go back to. You have a pin down here, I believe, much similar to the Smith & Wesson. You punch this out, pull this pin out, and you can remove these back straps. It comes with a decocker and manual safety and 3 different sizes of back strap. Me, I have large hands, so I run the large back strap, but it has a large, medium, and small for individuals who have hands from my size all the way ranging down to my wife and my camera person's size, which are quite small. Something I do like is, if you can see right here, there is a decent size magazine release on this pistol. It sets out really, really easy where you can hit that, and these are really good drop-free magazines. They are, unlike the CZ P07, marked on the back. Huge improvement over the SP01. The SP01 has witness holes on the side, and it's like 5, 10, and 18. I much rather the Smith & Wesson M&P style magazine holes that allow you to witness and see just how many rounds are left in that magazine. So, those are kind of my gripes with the handgun. Overall, I think it's a good handgun if you are okay with those issues with it. For me, I was really trying to find something that had a better trigger, had the controllability and the things that I got spoiled on with the SP01. And I was thinking, well, CZ couldn't have changed that much between one model to another. I was dead wrong. I ended up seeing this video on this gun from Honest Outlaw, who is, I believe, out of Idaho. And much like my CZ P07, I didn't practice what I preached in try it before you buy it. That is something I'm a huge fan of. I tell people all the time, and unfortunately I get screwed because I don't listen to my own advice. So I ended up picking up my P07 and absolutely loved it. I ended up saying, well, I'll watch a bunch of reviews and go and try the P07, get it and shoot it, and it was a huge flop for me. I wasn't as happy with it as I was my P01. I ended up carrying it in rotation ever so often. I still carried a little bit during summer, but realistically, I've got to the point where handguns are not as lethal, guys, as everybody makes them out to be. And more often than not, you never know what kind of stimulants, I'm going to say, an attacker might be using. So you never know how many rounds you're going to have to use. For me, going from the 18+1 magazine capacity on the P01 to the 15 on the P07, and then getting a little bit of weight shaved off of it, and then the night sights, and then the trigger, it was just kind of a culmination of things that led me to dislike this pistol. So in the near future, which is why I was hoping I would get to do a video on this gun soon, this gun will be traded out. I've thrown around a couple ideas on my X about potentially auctioning this off to you guys, my viewers. If that's something that you guys would be interested in, I will put up another poll after this video gets put out to see if that's something that you guys would want. This is actually a really great firearm, just not for me. And that's kind of the big thing here. Everybody has their own personal preferences and things that they get used to. I've brought it up before. I started out shooting 1911s. So I got spoiled on trigger pull. This may be a better fit for somebody else, but not for me. So it will end up getting sold. It won't probably stay in my collection for much longer, but we're going to put some more rounds through it. Really see if I could be a little more accurate with it. And then we'll talk more about what it comes with, what it doesn't come with, and give you guys some closing thoughts. So let's go back and load up another mag. So we are back at the area that I'm shooting from. We're going to take some more shots. I'm going to end up doing 4 rounds and a reload and see if we can't get a few more rounds on the paper down there and really try and do some switching between targets. With the next magazine, I'm going to try and put all 4 on my circle target and then switch between the 2 targets down there as I get to my second 15-round magazine. Really kind of show that despite my dislike for this firearm, it is a pretty good firearm. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Before I get to talking too much, let's go ahead and shoot and really show this thing off. I'll try to. So, we do have a round in the chamber. And there was a dead trigger. Let's try that again. Okay, so they say shooting certain firearms can lead to bad practices. Bad practices will follow you to other firearms. However, I will say that there are certain guns, regardless of what some people say, that nullify those bad tendencies. On certain firearms, I have noticed that I have shot both personally and for this, they have a heavier trigger pull, so you catch yourself going into it and jerking the firearm down. For me, that's something I catch myself doing a lot with this firearm. My SP01 doesn't have that heavy trigger pull. Therefore, I don't anticipate the trigger pull as much, and it leads to some of the inaccuracies that I deal with on this weapons platform for me personally. So based on that, it's not a gun for me. However, do I think it would be a decent carry gun for somebody who likes something like an HK or is looking for something that is better or more comparable to a Glock 19? Absolutely. I think this would probably be a great gun for you. I've always said that almost any gun that isn't a Glock, other than maybe a High Point, is probably a step up, other than some of the Rugers. There's always an exception to that, but we're not going to drag it out. This gun is good for the price point. And that's something I have to tell myself over and over and over again. The SP01 retails for almost around $1,000. It is almost one of the most Gucci, to use that word, pistols that CZ sells. I think one of the most expensive ones that you can get for them is like a ridiculously expensive CZ Parrot, which is a tricked out, highly customized, ported, barreled, or end of the slide version of the CZ75, which is kind of the SP01, but the SP01 is an updated CZ75, so it gets kind of confusing. So this was something that CZ wanted to do that was a lower price point, which I admire them for. You need to build firearms for everybody's price point. That's what they were trying to do here with the P07. I think the P07 to this day probably retails around, I think, $400. It's a sub $600 gun. I think it's punching right at where it should, going up against some of the more expensive guns like the HK VP9. It is a hammer-fired gun, so you do get the single action, double action. And if that's something that you love, this would probably be a great gun for you. To me, it is comparable to the VP9. But like I said, it's the VP9, but hammer-fired. So if that's something that you'd like, you'd probably like this gun. I'm probably going to end up starting a argument in the comment section, maybe not, over some of these thoughts and views on this pistol, but for me it was a miss. Maybe it was unrealistic expectations based on the price point, or maybe it was the fact that the SP01 spoiled me. But for me, it was a gun that was kind of a swing and a miss. And it will end up going to somebody who definitely loves it and appreciates it a whole lot more than I do. Hopefully the light here will end up going on my wife's new concealed carry gun, because I will be switching it out for a full-size light for either my Raider, which I do have a video review up, and we'll probably do at some point a part 2 to the Raider, putting some more rounds through it and getting a light on it and getting iron sights on it that are tritiums. But yeah, what do you guys think of the CZ SP07? What would you guys like to see me do with it? And what are some other firearms that you guys, my viewers, would like to see on the channel? If you could, drop those in the comment section. As always, guys, I love making these videos, but talk is cheap, ammo is expensive. If you could, at least leave a like or a comment or reshare. That'd be great. It helps with monetization from Rumble and YouTube, to where hopefully I can go get some more ammo, make more cool videos for you guys. If you can, I do have a Patreon. It is on my X, where you guys can go and vote on these firearms that I'm doing videos on. And hopefully, if you're able to, and only if you're able to, donate to my channel to help me make cool firearms content like this to share with you guys. That's all I kind of got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and my kind of rant about my dislike for the CZ P07. I hope you guys have a great day and stay safe out there.